TV signal.
All right, we'd like to go ahead and get started. I want to welcome everyone here to our city chambers and all those who are watching in TV land. And I've asked Chief Adams to give us an invocation here.
Father in heaven, we're grateful for the opportunity to meet together this evening and discuss the business of the city. Please, Father, as we do this, we ask that Thy Spirit might guide our thoughts, our minds, and our actions and our words, that we might be a benefit to each other. Please continue to guide and direct and bless us and guide this city and through the hands of Thy council members and mayor. Grateful for the opportunity to serve in the city. Please bless our great citizens and all that they do for each other. Continue to bless us with Thy warmth and comfort, and we say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. I've asked Councilman Schoves to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
The audience, please rise. Join us in the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go into public comments, and any of them that have come for the special meeting for the tax, that will come later. So if you've come for that, if you want to talk at that time later on, but if you've got something here for our council or for our public comments, come on up. You got 3 minutes, and state your name and go from there. Nope, you can just walk right up there. How's that? Just make sure you state your names.
My name's Terry Williams, and this is my son, John Jensen, and I like the part in the pledge where it says justice for all. On May 21st, you had a council meeting, and I didn't see it at the time. I saw it on YouTube afterwards, and so I'm kind of addressing what happened then and before then. To start with, in that meeting, Chief Adamson, I don't know if it's Adam or Adamson, but anyway.
Adams.
Adams, okay. Anyway, he stated that I disowned my boys, and that's never been true. So I just want to make clear the record that he told me that he said that because a year ago my son was off his medication, and my landlady next door didn't want him on the property and said he'd be trespassing because she didn't trust what he was going to do. And he's been in the hospital 3 times since then. And he's bipolar. He's been bipolar since 1997. He's like a little boy, and he can do some adult things, but basically he thinks on a child's level. And his whole life is just geared around sort of what children do. And so there are 3 different incidences that the community thinks that my boys, my sons, are monsters. And the first incident, my John and Philip were going to their own singles adult ward here in town, and everywhere John and I go together, and I'm sure he does it when I'm not around, but everywhere we go together, John goes up to a child and says, and gives him a high five. He does this everywhere we go. He did it today. We were at the health department, and this is just what he does. And so the first incident was that he was at his ward, a single adult ward, and he hugged a little child. There was, the single parents, and some of them had children with them. So he hugged a little child, and they told him to leave and not go back. And they didn't tell him why he had to leave. So when we went to his therapist and his doctor, they told us that somebody contacted Wasatch Mental Health to say that he had hugged his child so he couldn't go to church. So that was the first incident that people are saying that my sons have tried to kidnap children here in town. In the second incident, both my sons, John and Philip Jensen, are homeless, and John's been homeless for 10 months now, and it's really hard to get housing for him. And as soon as the broadcast happened on May 20th, everywhere John and Philip have gone into, Vasa, the gas stations, the Cinemark Theater, everywhere, the Food Care Coalition, everybody says, we saw you on TV, we don't want you here. And this is what it's been like for 2.5 months now. He hasn't been able to be in the coalition until today for the first time, like an hour ago, in 2.5 months, to go there to get a shower, do laundry, or get meals. He's been in homeless shelters, and they steal from him. They steal his coat, they steal his shoes, and there's like 30 men in bunk beds in the shelter, and he's been at different shelters. He slept under trees, and he slept in the van, and they share a van together. And so the second instance that a police officer came to my door one morning and said, somebody fitting Philip's description was seen trying to get a little girl to take a bicycle to get in the van. And the police officer left my place and found Philip at a laundromat here in town. I don't know which one, but found him at a laundromat, knocked on the window, woke him up, and the officer Bowen told him what he thought that Philip had tried to lure some little girl with a bicycle. And he had been asleep in the parking lot there all night, and the police officer had just waken him up then. And he says, look at the cameras, the surveillance cameras. You can check and see I was here all night long. I didn't go out to try to get some little girl. And then at the same time, then that officer told Philip to stay away from schools. Here he was sleeping in the van. He hadn't done anything. And the officer says, well, stay away from schools. You know, the appearance of whatever, somebody else isn't going to understand what's going on. So that was the second instance where the community thinks that my boys have tried to kidnap some children here in town, which hasn't happened. And then the third incident was on Sunday, May 19th. They had just been to my house, and they're homeless, so they left my place at 7:30, drove 4 blocks down to the park, and sat there to think, where am I going to park tonight? Because every night they have to park somewhere else because the police come up to them and say, you can't be here, you can't be here, you can't be here. And they don't have the money to go to KOA camp and park there. And he's on disability, and like I say, he's homeless, and his brother doesn't make enough money to even have a place for himself, much after he has to pay his bills. So that day, they get to the park, and John, he gets impatient. He just can't sit still very long, and Philip just wanted to sit and relax, just wanted to relax and think, what are they going to do that night? So John says, oh, you want to go down the slide? And John says, no, I don't want to go down the slide. And so John goes over to 160 feet from the parking lot over to the playground area, and he sees a little boy there, and he walked me through and showed me what he did. And there's like 2 brown horizontal poles like this in the play area, and he's about probably over about where his knee is. He's standing over there, and the little boy's leaning against the pole like this, and he says hi, and this is what he does all the time. He just says hi. And so the boy didn't respond, and so John just thought, okay, so he goes over to the slide, walks up the slide, looks through the telescope, and then goes down the slide. And Philip's sitting in the van, and he happened to look up, and he was seeing him coming down, but he saw Maddox's father over in this concrete area over by the swings, and so he's watching John come down the slide, and then as soon as John gets off the slide, then Andy Bird comes over and gets right up in front of John's nose to nose, and says, what the heck, you trying to kidnap my son? John doesn't know what's going on. He just goes a step back, and Andy says, don't you dare leave. The police are on their way. So when Philip's watching this from the car, then he comes rushing out of the car, and he tells Andy, he says, leave my brother alone. Just stop it. And he didn't. And so as soon as Philip... That's my time to stop talking. But anyway, so Philip comes... In my mind, I have bipolar, and he has bipolar. And he's severe, and I'm managed, and my train of thought goes out of me. But anyway, so Philip rushes up, and he tells John to go get that back in the car. And Philip first he goes to get between Andy and John so that Andy will leave John alone. So he gets in between them, and then he says, John, go back to the van. And right then, Andy grabs his neck hard. And so Philip's trying to break free, trying to go like this, and trying to get so he can breathe because it was very tight. And then John tries to get up onto his back or whatever to try to get Andy to let go of Philip. So I'm sorry my mind's not clear, but so John was there, and he's trying to break, and Philip and John are trying to break free from Andy. So right after that, so Philip's walking, as he's coming to where they are, he's hearing the mother say, come here, Maddox, the police are coming. And Philip was thinking, oh, that's good, the police are coming, they're going to stop this situation. So as soon as the police come, then they're asking everybody what happened. They asked Philip, and Philip was so upset with being attacked that they gave him a statement to fill out, and he was just frustrated, and he just threw the statement down. He couldn't do it because he was just so upset. And so the Maddoxes said that John and Philip tried to kidnap Maddox, and that they were attacking Andy, and the police, because Philip didn't fill out the statement, and the Officer Bowen took a picture of his neck where he had been grabbed. And so then the police took them to jail, and that was Sunday night. And then Monday morning, I was in therapy. I had broke my finger, and I was having physical therapy in Salem, and Philip calls and says, "Can you come and get me? We're getting released." So I got there by noon, and they were both released at noon. And then that was at noon. And because the judge said there wasn't sufficient evidence to see a kidnapping was even attempted, which wasn't. And so they went, and then Philip went straight to work. And then, while he was at work, then at 5 o'clock, KSL airs that they were alleged attempted kidnapping, and they'd already been out of jail since noon, and yet they're still broadcasting that they were arrested for attempted kidnapping. And then Philip was invited to go at the church and play basketball. And so when John wasn't there when he got off work, then he went over to go play basketball. And they saw the broadcast, and Philip didn't know anything about it. And then, I'm sorry, my mind is just messed up right now. So the men that were playing basketball were badgering Philip and said, what happened? Tell me about what happened on the news and that why you went to jail. They weren't asking him. They were, harassing him. And so he gets angry, and the police come, and I don't know all that happened there, and he's still working that issue out. But here he'd been out of jail for 5 hours, and he then he gets upset, and the police come, and he gets arrested again. So there's no van for John to sleep in, so I took him to a motel. But on the way to the motel, we see the van being towed away from the church. And on the record, it says abandoned. They could have called me and let me come and get the van, but they had to pay $560 to get it at an impound and everything else that happened after that. So John didn't have a place to sleep, so he goes up to Salt Lake. He's been in different shelters. He's been stolen from, and they don't get food there. Once in a while, they give him a sack lunch. But the whole thing is, the town, from what I've seen on Facebook and what I've heard from people, nobody, not a single person since May 19th has ever come to us calmly and says, what really happened? And my next door neighbor, he says, I don't want your boys around me. And I said, do you want to know what happened? He says, no, I just don't want your boys around. Nobody has wanted to know what really happened. And so that's my say. I just want the town to know my sons are human, and they're not monsters like that I've seen on. They've had threats. People have said on Facebook, if they see John and Philip, they would shoot them. And then the police said, if you do that, you're going to be accountable for what you're doing. They can't do it. But this is the attitude, the mentality of the community, have wanted them on another planet, just out, because they're homeless. It costs $12 to get a shower at the Flying J. There's no other place to get a shower except the Coalition. As soon as they went to the Coalition, they're turned away from the Coalition because they were on TV. If you're on TV, you're guilty because you're on TV, not because on the booking site it says innocent until proven guilty. But if you're on TV, the society thinks you did that because you're on TV. So everywhere they've gone, to VASA, to the Coalition, to gas stations, and martial arts studio, and anywhere to try to survive, they've been turned around. We saw you on TV. You can't be here. We don't want you here. Even in the little Chicago park, right in the next block over from me, there's a little square grass where our ward goes and has little gatherings. He went in there, and the people there said, "Oh, we don't want you here. You got to leave." So anyway, I just want the town to know my sons are humans, and they have their problems. They have their human issues. We've had mental illness in our family since 1800s, and we have bipolar. I have 2 schizophrenic children. I have a brother that's schizophrenic. I have a son that's schizotypal, and it's a hard life. It's an invisible illness that people don't see, but they think you're a bad person because you have a mental illness that they don't understand. So anyway, I just want the community to know that my sons are decent. They have their issues, and they both, like he said, he's been to the hospital 3 times. He's been catatonic 3 times in the last 2 months, that he just kind of wanders around like a robot with his tongue out, and he just can't really communicate. And they both, Philip went and had a mental evaluation. He's seeing a psychologist right now to deal with his corticidin, that he copes with life with over-the-counter cough medicine, corticidin, and he gets spaced out. So people are accusing him of being on cocaine and meth and stuff like this. They're not. He's just taking a cold cough, and he's trying to get it under control. He's seeing a psychologist. But my boys are worth being as a human. They're not considered trash. So anyway, I thank you for your time.
Thank you for coming here and explaining that to us. Thank you. All right, anyone else would like to come up? All right, seeing none, let's go. Oh, yeah. Just state your name.
Hello, Mark Denny. I'm assuming this is for the comments for the proposed property tax increase?
No,
Will that
we're
come
going to
later?
have a special meeting after this for that.
Is there public
Yeah,
comments
so,
during that
yeah,
section?
yes,
I'll
there'll be
wait, I'll
public-
wait for then.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's move into council comments. Let's go with Councilman Argal.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't really have anything, but I just want to put and I'm sure that's a shout out for our Fiesta Days, to our many, many volunteers, to each one of our departments. It always amazes me the day after this celebration is over with, after a week and a half to 2 weeks, our city's cleaned up, the park's cleaned up, and it looks pretty normal. And I am grateful to our employees in Spanish Fork. It's a great celebration. It's a great family time. I love Fiesta Days. It takes a lot to pull this off from the city and from our volunteers that help, and I'm just grateful for each one of them, and just want to say thanks. Thanks, Mayor.
Councilman Gordon.
Our chamber representative, Heather Youd, couldn't be here tonight, so she wanted me to touch on a few things. Today we celebrated our Business of the Month with Chick-fil-A, so we congratulate them and all their success, and their great chamber partner. The farmers market is in full swing on Saturdays from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. out here, and this Saturday will be the 3rd week that they're there, and so we invite all to come out to that. This Thursday there will be a ribbon cutting for Corey Chapman State Farm this Thursday at noon. That'll be up in Mapleton. And we will be starting a street fair on Main in conjunction with the farmers market for 2 Saturdays in September and October. And so look for that. And then our new networking luncheon will be held August 21st at the Oaks Event Center. Representative John Curtis will be here speaking. And so those are the upcoming chamber events. Garbage meeting tomorrow, so I'll report on that in the next meeting. And then the other thing I wanted to touch on was about 8 years ago, Chief Adams became our chief, and one of the cool things that he did was he brought the honor guard to our community, and these officers have represented very well Spanish Fork, and today Officer Clint Peterson gave me just a little note that memorializes that they were able to go back to Washington, D.C. to represent Spanish Fork, and our honor guard for Law Enforcement Memorial Week in 2019. And I heard something during the rodeo, as the rodeo announcer always does. They tug at my patriotic heartstrings and talk about how the real heroes in our community and in our country, and I just wanted to touch on these not just the honor guard, but our law enforcement and our first responders here in Spanish Fork, and thank them for representing Spanish Fork so well, and they are my heroes, and that's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilman Mendino.
Thank you, Mayor. Really quick, had the opportunity yesterday to attend the year-end coach's steak fry for the Parks and Rec Committee, and thank you, Dale, and your whole department that puts that on and then gives away enough food that you don't get to eat either. I know you guys went away hungry, but it was awesome to see that many men and women that they left the kids at home that night and came up and enjoyed steak and potatoes and corn, and they do such a great job of helping young boys and girls grow in a game. A shout out to Mark. I told him this last night, but our little Pinto League season, and he takes care of more than that. But man, what a rough year of rainouts. I mean, it couldn't have worked out any worse for trying to play baseball. Sometimes you'd just get the fields dried out, and then you'd have a downpour, and he'd have to make phone calls and say, hey, game's canceled, we'll try to make them up, and everything else. So he managed that well. The whole Parks and Rec department managed that tough season well this year, and the end result was a lot of kids making more friends and having a good time playing baseball, so baseball and softball. Rotary meeting, we had another Rotary meeting today. Happy to report that the Rotary Club is growing. We've got a couple of new members the last couple of months, and it's one of those organizations that, again, people give of their time and help to make our city great. Piggyback on what Brandon and Councilman Gordon and Councilman Argyle mentioned of Fiesta Days. What a great event. Thank you all for your volunteer efforts and everybody coming out and enjoying them. It's amazing that they put it on every year, and it happens. And one more note that I had was our law enforcement. Thank you for working in conjunction with the county in the 100-year storm that we were all blessed to have. I think the numbers have come in, and it's beneficial that is the 100-year storm that dropped that much water in that short amount of time, caused quite a few things up the canyon. If you haven't seen pictures, you can find pictures online, but amazing that happened like it did, and with our responsibility of getting up Spanish Fork Canyon and dealing with what happened up there. Just great job in working in concert with the other authorities and making sure everybody was as safe as possible. So thank you for that. That's all I have, Mayor.
Great. Councilman Scobes.
Mayor, everything's been spoken. I appreciate all the hard work. Fiesta Days, all the celebrations are like Christmas. A lot of work prepping for it. A wonderful celebration, and then it's nice to have it over with. So I just appreciate everyone's hard work and everything that's been said. That's all.
Great. Councilmember Beck.
Well, I won't go on and on about Fiesta Days, but I can guarantee you these guys are happy when the 25th comes, because they don't get a text from me every morning telling them what to wear later that evening. So they had a couple options this year, and I bet they're like, oh, good, I can wear what I want, and Stacy's not telling me what to wear tonight. So I'd like to echo to the Parks and Rec and our police officers and so many people that were involved, so many volunteers, Miss Spanish Fork and her royalty being at so many different things, and our youth city council as well. And I'm sure a lot of volunteers are out there that they're never recognized, and they think, well, you don't know that I helped, but really we do, because it wouldn't happen if you weren't helping. So thank you. The library summer reading program wrapped up this past week, and I've asked Scott to put up a list of just all of the sponsors and people that gave items to help this reading program just be fun for the children, the teens, and the adults. So as you look this list over, if you'd like to support them, we encourage you to do so. Also, the Active and Healthy gave pickleball paddles and bikes and helmets, and so it was a big success for those that participate. Pam, how many, do you even have numbers? I'm asking, I didn't ask you that, no numbers yet. Hopefully next month I can report how many people were involved in the summer reading program, and thanks to the library staff, because it's a big time commitment for them. And then last week I was able to go to UVU and attend the Utah Women and Leadership Project meeting, and there were women from Moab City Council and mayors clear up to Logan. We met at UVU for half a day, and it was just super informative, going over a lot of different things, and I thought that was a great opportunity where women can mingle and get to know each other and learn more about leadership in government. So that was a good opportunity that I had, and that's all I have.
Thank you. appreciate that, and I'll echo everything that all the council members have said about Fiesta Days. It's a wonderful time. I had a lady come up to me today and said, her married daughter said, "This is my favorite celebration." And she said, more favorite than Christmas? She said, even more than Christmas. And I said, well, great. Then we did well. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, the city, for partying and putting on a good show, and we appreciate that. All right, we're going to go to Spanish Fork 101, ADU application process. So it looks like, Dave, you got it.
Thank you, Mayor. To start with, I thank everybody, particularly City Council, for your interest and for your involvement as over the course of the past year we amended the city's regulations for accessory apartments so more people in the community can have them. It's really our intent now to make it as easy as we possibly can for folks that want to have an accessory apartment to have one in their homes. And I say that understanding that still not everybody is going to have a property that qualifies, that meets the criteria that we've set up to have accessory apartments. But with that said, again, we really are trying to focus on making it as simple and straightforward as possible for people that want to have an accessory apartment to be able to do so. And with that being said, people can find answers to any questions that they want about having accessory apartments on our website. But the invitation that I have, and in fact, this is something that we sent out in a letter that went to folks that either have had accessory apartments in the past or that have properties that maybe have some characteristics that make us think they're good candidates for accessory apartments. We sent a letter to those folks earlier today, in fact, inviting them to reach out to our community development staff to learn about the program that we have now and whether they qualify and what they might need to do to be legally registered with the community. And to that end, there are 5 of us in the community development office that anybody can reach out to. You can send us an email or give us a phone call. When it comes to answering questions about accessory apartments, I think frankly we're all pretty interchangeable. So any one of us probably would be able to answer questions the same way. And it's really our hope that rather than providing a checklist maybe that we could review tonight or that we'd suggest people review or spend time with, that they just give us a call. And we can look at their property and maybe really drill down pretty quickly as to, first of all, whether or not they qualify, and then determine what exactly they need to do to have that accessory apartment legally registered with the community. I say that in part because we recognize that there's so many differences between different properties in the city, and I really believe that we're going to have to, in as much as we can, deal with those different circumstances individually. We're trying to be as pragmatic as we can as your staff to make sure that we're following the ordinance, but also being reasonable as we help people through the process to have an accessory apartment. So again, we invite people to perhaps visit this page on the city's website. It's devoted to accessory apartments. At the bottom of that page, again, there's contact information for myself and for other people in our office. Please give us a call. We'd love to chat. I'll mention this lastly. Part of why we'd like to talk to people who are interested in having a legally registered accessory apartment in the community. If somebody doesn't qualify for one reason or another, we'd like to understand that. And we recognize that we've, I think, followed best practices in developing the standards that are in place now for accessory apartments. I'd also say that there may be room for adjustments and improvements. And for example, if we're repeatedly seeing, something that, maybe it's a square footage issue on the size property that they have, or something like that that is disqualifying somebody from having an accessory apartment, that's something we'd like to know. And we'd like to know that really from the standpoint of understanding that some of those things could be adjusted down the road. So, Scott, I don't know if you want to take a minute maybe just to pull up the actual page. People can make application by visiting the software that we use, CitizenServe, much like you would. for a business license or a building permit or that type of a thing. The system is fairly intuitive, although it's not like Amazon or Google. It is a little bit less simple and straightforward than some of the things that I think we've become very used to using these days. So again, the invitation is to please just give us a call. We're happy to walk people through the process. And I say this entirely with the hope that we're able to help as many people in the community as that want to have accessory apartments to be able to do so and have those operate in neighborhoods such that they're a positive addition to the community and they don't create any hassle or problems at all. So that being said, any questions by chance for me about anything?
Well, good.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. All right, consent items.
Motion to approve the consent items.
Second.
Got a motion by Councilman Gordon, a second by Councilman Mendenhall. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Okay. Let's move to new business. Ordinance 16-19, making modifications to the general utility regulations of the city.
All right, this is kind of a simple one. We have an ordinance on sewer laterals that up to the right-of-way line, the city takes responsibility for the structural integrity of those sewer laterals, and we maintain those. Recently, we've had a request for someone to do a forced sewer lateral, if you will, from a sump pump all the way out into the street, into the manholes. We haven't allowed those in the past, but we thought it would be well to make sure in our ordinance it stated that from the right-of-way line into our sewer main, it's gravity fed and it's a typical lateral, and that's what you usually see when someone has a sump. They'll pump it up to grade and then it'll gravity flow into our sewer line. This just clarifies that and requires it.
Any questions? All right. Just a second here. Okay, I'd entertain a motion.
I move we approve ordinance 1619, making modifications to the general utility regulations of the city.
Second.
Got a motion by Councilman Mendenhall, a second by Councilman Scobes. This will be a roll call vote. Councilman Scobes?
Aye.
Councilman Mendenhall?
Aye.
Councilman Gordon?
Aye.
Councilmember Beck?
Aye.
Councilman Argal?
Aye.
That passes. Okay, Resolution 19-17, approving an interlocal agreement with Nebo School District for the school resource officers in the junior high and middle schools.
As you are all aware from our budget discussions, when we added budget monies for a new school resource officer, the school district has come to us and indicated how pleased they are that we have officers in our high schools. And they are seeing now a need to put them into the junior highs, and starting in the next few years also be converting into going back to the middle school system. And they've proposed that we add another SRO to be shared between the junior high school and the middle school. So right now we will have two junior highs for the next couple of years, but eventually Diamond Fork Junior High will become Diamond Fork Middle School. So this is an interlocal agreement that just copies exactly the interlocal agreement we have for the high schools, but it puts an SRO into the junior high schools. Questions?
Great. Any questions? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion.
I move that we approve resolution number 19-17, approving the interlocal agreement with Nebo School District for school resource officers in the junior high and middle schools.
Second.
Got a motion by Councilmember Beck, a second by Councilman Gordon. This also will be a roll call vote. Councilman Mendenhall.
Aye.
Councilman Gordon.
Aye.
Councilmember Beck.
Aye.
Councilman Argal.
Aye.
Councilman Scobes.
Aye.
That passes. Okay, deed from Nebo School District conveying 600 South to Spanish Fork City.
So the school district is actually giving us some property, but this is quite unusual, so I wanted to take a few minutes and talk about the details a little bit. So if you go down Main Street to 600 South, there's what appears to be a road there that leads to the Landmark High School. it's paved, it's got a street sign, it looks like a road. It's not a road, it's a private driveway into the high school. We've had a new business come on the south corner there, and because of the size of their frontage, we were trying to move their access off from Main Street onto 600 South. It's just safer for their customers, also for the students and teachers coming in and out of Landmark. So we've talked to the school district about that. They have some concerns about that because of how that may impact their school, and they're concerned about parking out there, and they've had a few issues. And so as we talked to them about it, we felt we could allay their fears if we talked about deeding it over with a reverter. And generally, I don't encourage you to do things like that, but with the school district and the relationship we have and creating a safe environment for a new business there, I am recommending it in this situation. So there are some conditions with that. So first of all, if we ever cease to use it as a road, then it will revert back, the property will revert back to the school district. Now keep in mind, they're giving it to us, they're not selling it to us. Secondly, they've asked that we not allow any access to the business on the north side of the street, just on the south. And that's acceptable as well. It's the south side that creates the safety issues and the safety hazards. So we've talked to the new business going there, and they understand that. The third thing is they've asked that there not be allowed parking on the street on Monday through Friday from 6 a.m. to 5 p.m. So it's school hours and a little bit before and after. And that seemed to make a lot of sense too. And the last condition was we've limited the number of cars coming into that business to 50 a day. Now, what's going there currently is a used car lot. They won't come close to that. But the concern is, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, what it becomes. And the school district is concerned that if they get something that maybe a drive-in that pulls in a lot of vehicular traffic and you get stacking, it's going to create a real problem for access in and out of the school. And so as we looked at that, we agreed with that as well. And so because of the reverter with those conditions, I wanted to talk to you about that and actually get your approval to accept the deed from the school district for 600 South with those conditions. So you have questions about that?
How far, Junior, then all the way through?
You see the green there? That's the property line. It will go to there. No, yeah, right there. So it'll go to the property line, which will be the green. Now that yellow, I believe, is some kind of a speed bump or speed table. We'll need to address that in some manner, but Chris will be on top of that.
Okay.
Any other questions? So you're looking for,
We need a vote to approve acceptance
approve
of that deed with reverter.
can I entertain a motion?
I move we approve the deed from Nebo School District conveying 600 South to Spanish Fork City with the reverter clause as explained by Junior.
Got a motion by Councilman Mendenhall,
Second?
second by Councilmember Beck. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we need to adjourn
I move we adjourn
from this meeting.
from this meeting.
Second.
A motion by Councilman Gordon, thank you. And second by Councilman Mendenhall. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, I'd entertain a motion to go into our special Truth and Taxation City Council meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion by Councilman Gordon, a second by Councilman Argal. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. You want to start us off, Kent?
Okay, this is a special city council meeting. I'm Kent Clark. I'm the finance director for the city. And today we're going to walk through our public hearing for a truth and taxation hearing for a property tax increase, and to educate those in attendance, to remind the city council, this has been discussed before, but also to those at home that might be watching. So today is the time for this meeting to discuss the property tax increase. It's related to the budget for FY20's fiscal budget, which the property tax that will be collected will be for this year, that we will collect it in this November. So it's for the tax rate of 2019 for our budget year of 2020. So that's where you see a 19, sometimes you see a 20 sometimes, okay? This is just a diagram to show you the difference that we do have a sales tax revenue for the city, and we also have property tax. These are probably the two big revenue generators for the city. I just wanted to highlight the sales tax. You can see kind of how volatile sales tax is. We are receiving a growth pattern in our sales tax right now, but again, it's very volatile with, you can see a recession, what happened to our sales tax. During that same time, you can see what happens with property tax. Property tax is a pretty stable revenue source that kind of weathers through the economy and different things that happens to the economy. Just a brief discussion about what property tax is related to Spanish Fork. On a person's home that pays property tax, you get a $1,200, $2,000, $3,000 bill. But of the pie that we're talking about today is only 9% of what your property tax bill is. Of course, the big gorilla in the room is the school district, who has the majority of the property tax on a home. But the Spanish Fork sliver of our pie that we're going to talk about tonight is 9% of what that property tax bill is that you get. Here's a little snapshot of a comparison between some of these numbers we're going to come back to in a few minutes, but in 2018, what the average price is for a home, a market value, and then what it's gone up in this past year for 2019. Of course, the taxable value on a home is discounted by 45%, so you're really paying property tax on only 55% of your property tax. Again, the players in the property tax world who come taxing at your home, you have Utah County, Central Utah Water Conservancy, to assessing from the state and local, Nebo School District, and Spanish Fork. So we're going to come back to this rate right here as far as what the rate that we have and what that value is, or what that sliver of expense of your $1,700 property tax bill. The part that we're talking about tonight at this home, or an average home, would be a $159 bill. To remind the council and also the public, there is a plan the city has to increase the property tax at a methodology or a reason why we're doing this property tax increase. And I think it's important to understand that last year, as the values of property tax increases, it forces the property tax rate to decline. And with that decline, the city receives the same amount of money that we received in the prior year, but it forces the rate down. It doesn't allow the city to capture any inflation through property tax for the services that we provide. It leaves the revenue stream as a flat thing, and we only get new growth. So we receive the same dollars we received in the prior year spread over a higher value of property of homes or real estate, and that causes that rate to go down. I'll show you that in a few minutes. But there is a plan. So two of the terms I wanted to review with you is, one is called hold the rate, and the other one is raise the tax rate. So this year we're proposing to do both of those. Last year, in our plan, we decided that in order to plan and prepare for a fire station, we were going to hold the rate last year, and to hold that rate, allowing property tax revenue to increase, maintaining the rate, and letting the value of the home increase and receiving more property tax revenue, earmarked specifically for the fire station. And so the plan, when I talk about the plan was for the fire station, we would hold the rate for 3 years. And after we did that, and we captured those 3 years, that would be a new, the rate, the combined rate, to go forward would allow enough money first to build the building and also allow us enough to raise the rate high enough that we can maintain the O&M to keep the fire station afloat, the wages, the equipment for a second fire station that would go. One is for enough to raise it for 3 years to help support the building of the building, but then also to maintain it, it would continue on. The second part is to raise the rate, meaning not only will we maintain the rate at that 9 mils, but we'd also, this year, going to raise it. So we had the plan, or the plan that we're proposing is for the fire station, we'd hold the rate for 3 years. Last year was the first year. This is the second year for the fire station, and holding it 1 more year for the fire station next year. In addition to that, this will be the first year that we're going to hold the rate and in some case raise the rate a little bit in order to raise enough funds to start planning the purchase and building of a new library. So there's 2 big capital items that we're talking about. One is the fire station up on the east, the number 2 fire station, and also to plan for a new library. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this, hold the rate and raise the rate. So we've been talking about this for a couple of years, the process of holding the rate. Back in 2013, we held the rate. As you can see, it was the 12's rate. We held it to 13 and didn't allow it to fall, and we captured $21,000. And as we continued on these next 4 years, we did not hold the rate, and we allowed that rate to fall. It went from 12 to 11 to 10 to a little bit lower in 10, and then on this one it went to 9.55. And in this year, for last year, we held the rate at 9.55, and that captured $150,000 that we could save away, earmark specifically for that fire station. And the plan was we'll continue that 2 more times for the fire station and also start for the library. So I'm going to walk you through this little graph, and this hopefully will downsize it enough that everybody can understand what I'm going to talk about. Because when you're talking with tax rates, you can see it's got a decimal and a whole bunch of zeros. So it's a big, long decimal number. And as we talk through this, I want to just kind of focus on the tail end. So if you can see 955, it's called 955 mils. And so we'll just talk in those terms, and it'll be a little bit easier to walk forward instead of the hundredths of a hundred thousandths of a whatever. So in 2018, the rate that we used after holding it from 17 to 18 was 955. As we rolled forward to 2019, as property values increased, it forced that rate to decline. And so that rate then, if we went to 19, would be 860, would be the new rate. It dropped 95 mils in that drop point. And so the council again decided we would maintain the rate and to tax all the homes at this maintain the rate, the same rate that we had last year. Okay, so that was the theory. The idea, what we didn't know is for sure has how much would it take to get 150,000, because we've planned out that we'd get 150,000 for the next 3 years, and that would be what we'd use for the fire station. So when we calculated it, the fire station, what did we need to, as far as the new growth, to capture that 155,000 for the fire station? It ended up being 60 mils is all that we needed to get to the fire station part. Okay, so what that meant for the fire station, I'm just going to talk fire station, not library right now, was that we would on the way to hold the rate, we would add 60 mils to our 860, and that way we would capture 150,000 for the fire station. The cost to that now, the average home again is 293. The taxable portion of that one is 161. So the impact of capturing $150,000 for the fire station on the average home is $9.67 per year, or 81 cents per month, that would be contributing towards the fire station. So if we're going to hold the rate, you can see that that left a little bit on the table because it had such a dramatic fall of the from here to here. But we only needed 150, or we only needed 60 basis points to capture that. Okay, so now on to the library. For the library, in order to pay the debt service on the portion, the library estimating maybe 12 million, 14 million, we're not quite sure because it's 3 years down the road is when that construction time is going to be. But 180,000 is the portion that we need to start planning towards getting enough money in our reserves to help in the purchase of the library and also in order to make the debt service of the library payment. So we're going to be issuing bonds for the library. We're not issuing bonds for the fire station, but we are going to issue some bonds for the library. So we need 180,000 for the next 3 years. 150 for the fire station, 180 for the library. How much do we need to get that? So as we fill up the rest of that, hold the rate, there was 35 mils that was left on the table that we can use towards the library. That got us part way. Then to increase the rate in order to capture the remaining amount in order to get to the 180, it required another 36 on top of that. So hence, as we're going to hold the rate to maintain it here, and we also propose raising the rate to 991 in order to capture the full 180,000. So the 150 will be for 3 years, last year, this year, and next year. The 180 will be this year, next year, and the next year, and that's the plan. What's the impact total to the city? For the library, it's $11.44 or 95 cents per month on an average home that has a value of $293,000. Add the fire station into it at $9.67 and 81, you come down to the total impact is $21.11 a year or $1.76 per month. That's kind of like the last verse of the song. But to give you the information, let's see, does that go? So this is the plan in review. Hold the rate for the fire station at the price of $1.81 per month. We're in year 2. And then to raise the rate for the library, which part of the library came at that little extra that was on hold the rate. And so in June, when we were anticipating, we didn't know what the value was going to be when we did the tentative budget. We were anticipating that this amount was going to be $1. But because we were able to take some of the hold the rate to help the library, that value, that amount of the cost to the resident dropped to 95 cents. Now, we're at the mercy of trying to figure out next year what is the fall in the rate. Depends on the appraisal values of homes, and as that goes, what the impact is to hold the rate might be. But the goal is another 150 for the fire station and another 180 for the library for next year. So that's just part of the plan. How do we compare in property tax with other communities around us? One of the claim to fame of Spanish Fork City is we've always been the lowest property tax. Eagle Mountain, I guess, sneaked past us to be in the bottom. And our fallen rate, if we let it fall, went to 860. The proposed rate that we're asking for is to raise it to the 991, which you can see is still the next closest city to us is 25% higher than us at 1,241. And you can see the rest of that as we go up. As you compare to our two sister cities, you can see that Payson residents on the very same value of house and their property, if they had our property tax, if we had Payson's property tax rate, it's $45 difference. Payson pays $45 more for the same house, and if you lived in Springville in that same house, you'd be paying $124 more than Spanish Fork. And so we are still considerably low in the property tax world. Kudos to the council. This is a worthy 2 projects, and it's not just being swallowed up into the general fund per se. The specific 150 and the 180 is being saved in a capital projects fund for specific projects to be used on, and the citizens at home can know that 81 cents per month and the 95 cents per month we're going for a specific project that will be used and for the community to use and to give service into the future. So again, here's the summary page as far as what the two projects are, what the impact is on an average home. The property tax sliver of our pie of 9% of the pie goes from 138 to 140, 159, and we're proposing by resolution for you to adopt the property tax rate at 991.
Okay, thanks, Kent. All right, this will be a public hearing. Just so you'll know, just come up, state your name, you have 3 minutes. Wait a minute, we got to go into public hearing first. I'm just getting the ground rules. And so what we want to hear from everybody, but if you're restating what someone's already said, will you please don't, We'd like to hear, because we understand you probably all have the same, a lot of you might have the same deal, and so we get it. But if you got something new, then come up. We'd love to have that. Okay.
I'm sorry. There was 3 more slides that Mark.
What you?
I didn't use it. I want to show you the locations. Okay. Sorry. I didn't want to lose. She did a lot of work to put this on. So this is the site that we're looking for the library location. It's right next to the city office here. The church building right here next door. The existing library is here across the street, and we're looking at putting the new library site right there, just so the residents know where this site might be. I forgot the pictures were on there. I'll turn to the next one. This is not working. Okay, next. The new fire station, the city has already purchased this property. It's up on, if you can see, 2600 East, the new Walmart, the small neighborhood Walmart's there, Small Mart, some people call it. This property right here is for the new fire station. And is there another one? So anyway, that's the look of what's there right now. And so if you envision a new fire station, that's the location of the plan of where to put those.
Do you have actual plans for the fire station?
We'll talk about that in just a few minutes.
Okay.
Sorry.
More?
I didn't do these slides, so I'm sorry. Here's a timeline of how those will play out, and Seth, you might want to come and...
You want to do that one?
You do this one. Seth made this timeline, so instead of me chopping it up, I'll let him.
Yeah.
This is a proposed timeline. No, sorry, Kent. We're here in August. This one's better. We're here in August today. The fire station design is nearing completion. We expect that the fire station will be under construction October of this year, so in about a month and a half we'll design that, or we'll kick off the construction of that. We'll start the library feasibility study, which the feasibility study really is for the programming, for us to identify the size and scope of that project. We know how big our library is today, about 12,000 square feet, and we'll go through a study just like we did for the fire station. We had a group of individuals and staff, elected officials, and other committee members that helped us to identify how large the fire station should be. We went and toured fire stations and looked at, I think it was 6 or so different stations, getting a sense of how that should be. That helped us to identify the size and the scope of that project, and then we proceeded on into the design phase. We'll do the exact same thing with the library. We expect that process will be slightly longer because of the size of the library and the research that we'll need to do, but that'll take place and start. So this outline goes over 2 things. Let me maybe just break it down. I'll do the fire station first. So the fire station, we're in design. I think we're at the 30% stage of that. Yeah, the 30% stage of the plans, and we'll move fairly quickly from 30 to 60 to 90 and bid out. Fire station construction will start in October of this year, and then we expect that the completion of that fire station will be a year from now, corresponding about the same time that the new hospital opens up in town in September of next year also. It's been on our timeline to finish that. The contractor that has been hired is very comfortable and confident that they can meet that timeline from the very beginning of the process, and they've been helpful as we've got our architect working on it and the construction manager, general contractor, working together. We've identified cost savings going through the process. Even though it's an expensive building, they've done a great job. So that's the fire station. Library, so if you could take this timeline back a year, you would have the same elements that we'll do with the library. And somebody once said, when we were talking about building a building, it takes about 3 years to do this. And somebody once said, 3 years, boy, government sure moves slow. And while that seems like it's a long time, we're building a community facility. We're building something that should stand for 50 or even 100 years. And so it's not something that you just put together. There's a home builder that once upon a time had a billboard that said, we can build your house in 43 days. And how do we do it? Lots of magic. We're not building these buildings, in that same time frame and that same quality. It's a community facility that'll have a 50 year plus lifespan. So we've got a feasibility study that will start here shortly, and then shortly after that, sometime early next spring, we'll take that feasibility study and hire an architect, and eventually, short after that, we'll hire a construction manager, general contractor. There's an acronym, CMGC. The architect and the CMGC work together as the building is designed to maximize cost savings and everything. That will start in the late winter, early spring of next year. We would expect to bid out the construction for that facility, the library, in the winter of 2020, with the bids due back January of 21. Start construction then in the spring of 21, and then complete the library in the spring or summer of 22. That gives you a rough look at a timetable for these two facilities.
No, I think we're done. I'm sorry. Sure? Yeah,
Is there anything next, Scott? Okay.
All right. Once again, so we want to hear from everyone, and that's what this meeting for is, a public hearing. So I would entertain a motion to go into public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion by Councilman Gordon, a second by Councilman Argal. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Now you can come on up.
Okay. My name is Jessie Anriel. And just since 2013, we've lived in Spanish Fork longer, but our current home we purchased in 2013. Our property taxes have almost doubled. And I realize that 80% of that is Nebo School District, but at the same point, it's steadily increasing. So what I haven't seen on these charts is that it's not accounting for the new growth of the homes that have been built in the last year. It also isn't taking into account the property value increases. So last year, my taxes to Spanish Fork City were $190. If you hold the rate, and I'm going off of estimating that my home will increase in value the same from 2017 to 2018 as it will in 2018 to 2019. Does that make sense? So they tax me $26,000 more on my property taxes. That's the cost that my home went up in value. So based upon that, if you hold the rate, my taxes to you will go up by $25 automatically, which is more than the $21. And if you increase it, it will be $32. So I had to review my notes. Also, I didn't see any information on, what kind of taxes the businesses bring and contribute to these types of things in our city. So that's all I had to say.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Jessie.
you.
Hello, my name is Mark Denny. I guess first of all, maybe during this portion, if you can explain, is this going to be passed through like a vote of the citizens, or is it going to be voted upon by the council? If you can explain that just before we end tonight. So I think the library that we have is just fine. It's not new, it's not modern. It's got some character, right? It's built in 1965, but I don't really think we need a new one. Fire station, I mean, those things are important, but a library, no. I'm a library user. I think it's just fine. I don't think we need a brand new large library. That's my point. So, if I ask each of you to just consider that, do we really need one, or do we want one because it looked nice and shiny and new? So, thank you.
Thank you. Come on out.
All right, I'll try not to be too. I'll try not to be too repetitive, but I mean it'll go quick. It won't be too painful. At least don't.
What's your name, sir?
I'm Scott Hurst. Yeah. Been here since 1995. It's a very, very nice city. Very nice location. A very nice place to raise a family. Raise my kids here. Been very, very proud to live here. Anyway, Nebelbahn raised our taxes rather significantly last year, over $1,100 per year. I'm just asking that maybe we take a breath for 2020, maybe even until 2022. Property tax base seems like it will continue to grow dramatically, with Spanish Fork annexing a lot of developable land in the last few years. Maybe ask the question, it's more rhetorical than anything else. If you know off the top of your head, that'd be great. But how many new subdivisions are in build mode or development mode right now? I'll come back to that in a minute. We don't need a new library. The voters said as much when we defeated the massive bond that a couple years ago that was defeated at the ballot box, and thank goodness, because that would have been a massive increase, way above the $1,100 that the increase was. I wonder if this is a plan B to revisit that massive bond. We don't need more ball fields. We don't need a high-end rec center as well. I know that you've talked about being in a library, building a new fire station up around 2600 East, which is a great location, I think. But again, I think we've got other things that we can look at. And with that, the sales tax, as you pointed out earlier, which I thought was rather instructive, was that it will continue to grow as Spanish Fork has finally in the last 8 to 10 years shown the wisdom to invite big retailers into the city, so we don't always have to drive north to buy a stick of wood or eat at a place not named McDonald's or Wendy's. We have only just begun, it seems, to see new retailers come to the city, and thank you very much for having the wisdom to help us continue to grow and become really a strong anchor here in southern Utah County. All that burgeoning sales tax revenues coupled with an expanded property tax base means that the city can afford to hold the property tax rates for at least a few years. So with that, thank you for letting me have a time
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Scott.
Thanks, Scott.
Alvin Black here. Just have a few comments. Obviously there's the need to build facilities as the city grows, but my concern is that we're overbuilding them, or we're building them to a level of quality that is unnecessary. If I just do a back of the napkin cost analysis of the new fire station, you're running close to $500 a square foot. If I go online to anywhere, they say, well, an adequate quality fire station you can build about 250. If you're in a union city, top of the line quality, and you're building through a union, you should be able to build it at $400 a square foot. And then I'll take a look at the plans. I haven't taken a look at the plans here yet, but it seems like for a 3-bay fire station, the square footage is fairly extreme. Another concern as I look through the budget, I believe in fiscal year 19, you had $200,000 for design engineering costs, and you're budgeting $350,000 in fiscal year 2020. So that puts us at $550,000 just in design costs for fire stations. There are smaller communities across the country that build 3-bay fire stations for a total cost of $500,000. And so my concern, obviously, we don't want to have a shack that's going to fall down, and I respect the fact that as we move to professional fire department, that you want to have some quality, but you know, when you're taking money from the citizens, there's a weighing of factors. And, you know, that money doesn't look very much, but there are months that frankly, for myself personally, I would have loved to have had an extra $50 you know, to feed my family, to literally, you know, buy them something other than pork and beans. And so I think as council members, you have an obligation to balance that. The library, you know, 12 million is what you published, 14 million is what I'm hearing now, you know, and 14 million, you should be able to build library space for less than $200 a square foot for all of the research that I have done. And I understand that some of that might include the property costs, I don't know. But as you look at that, you know, that would get us essentially a massive, massive, you know, library here that I don't think we need. I think growing the existing library, maybe expanding the existing library a little bit would make a lot more of an economic sense than burdening the citizens by raising the taxes so significantly. Thank you.
Thank you.
I've got another obligation I've got to run to, but I just wondered if there would be any more hearings on this subject down the road. With, pardon me, Frank Koenig. Does anyone know whether there will be any more public hearings on?
Probably not for another year.
I applaud the city for keeping the taxes down low on that chart. That's great. I would encourage you guys to think about just being the city that gets by with that, you know, and keeping in mind what this last gentleman said. You know, we get by with what we have rather than blow it on a bunch of stuff that we might not really need, and especially the planning costs and everything. I think that's a real relevant point. I wish I could stay longer. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Frank.
Hi, my name's Beth Pearson. First of all, I like the idea of the library being built next door. One of the things that I was worried about when they were combining it with the rec center is it would be too far out of town and hurt our downtown area. So kudos to keeping it downtown. I think that's important. I also am totally okay with funding a new fire station and also with a new library. I see the needs for programs and the space and things like that, and so I think it's a good thing. I just wanted to reiterate that I think the money part is just too much for what we want to do, and so I ask you guys to vote this plan down and then vote for a smaller. I mean, we have the money. We saw the sales increase. The sales taxes are through the roof that we've gotten from all the growth. So I think there's other ways we can get this money to fund the fire station and or a new library without having to raise taxes on us as individuals, because we do have a lot of growth and there's other funds available.
Thank you.
Thanks, Beth.
Thanks, Beth.
Anyone else?
Yes.
Come on down.
My name is Tim Joyce. I'd like to thank the council and the mayor for their due diligence they do with all of these projects. Thank you. I would like to also encourage you in the same vein, though, to make sure that we don't do a monkey see, monkey do. And I'm referring to Springville's library in particular, which many of their citizens are quite upset with. It was overbuilt by about 50% more than what they need and has the associated cost burdens that went with that. That was an $11 million extravaganza, if I remember correctly. I'd also like to ask the council for some feedback. The feedback would be this. A couple of years ago, we torpedoed the plan for a $40 million extravaganza that was going to be built down there on the corner of Volunteer Drive. I'm sure you all recall that. That was going to be the new senior center, the new library, the new missile base, and so on. Is it the council's plan to do a new leg to this every year in order to get what they tried to get back then? Can someone address that?
That has never been discussed, so not a plan.
Okay, that was my question. Good. The other thing I would ask is this. I'm hearing impaired. I've had a great deal of difficulty in here tonight trying to hear people speaking. It's because the sound appears to be directed forward to you folks, but not backwards to those of us back there. If something can be done to accommodate those of us with disabilities, I would appreciate it.
Thank you. Bringing that to our attention. And we don't clap here. You know, we're keeping things level. We don't cheer. We don't yell. We are here to hear. So thank you. Anyone else?
I'm in favor of holding the rate, not increasing it, because I do think these things are needed, but I think like we should kind of wait to see how the holding the rate would work out. Anyway, that.
Thank you. Great. Anyone else? If not, oh, come on up.
Hey, with the new library, are we going to have
Well, I need your name first.
I'm Andrew Harmon. I'm just wondering, with the new library, are we going to have any new programs with this new library that are paid programs, like what we've done with some of the other libraries with passport services and other things where it actually gains revenue, where we can downsize the cost of how much the library is actually going to cost for the community? Is there any plans for any extra paid services that will help combat the cost of this library?
Come back on that for you. Okay. Anyone else? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to go out of public hearing.
So moved.
Second?
Got a motion by Councilman Gordon, a second by Councilman Member Beck. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. Do you guys want to address some of these questions that were raised?
Great. Thank you so much. We really appreciate the questions that were asked, and I did my best with some lightning fingers to get the gist of all of the questions. Myra's going to help me as well if I'm off, and Kent can help me if I'm getting off as well. To Mr. Joyce's comments first, that his comments about the hearing, we are so sorry. Yeah, this space is actually pretty poor as far as community space for these meetings. In fact, part of what we propose to do in the plans is to create a new city council chambers that can be used by the library all the other times. We're in this building, we're in this room one night every 2 weeks, or two nights a month, 3 nights a month, and it sits idle a lot. So we can build a new council chambers, have a lot better sound, and have more space, and provide better acoustics, etc. But in some vein, probably wall off. If you were in this room, for example, you could wall off this space, and the library could use the rest of the space for programming, giving them greater programming needs. In fact, that's the greatest need the library has, is program space. They have one program room. And in the next couple of weeks, Pam, can I talk about that room? Or is that's not a surprise yet? What Haley's been working on? Oh, no. That's okay? Okay. Okay, so they're doing a Harry Potter escape room activity that they'll invite library patrons to. It was wildly successful. In fact, I think the last time you did it, you had more people wanting to use it than could. Long wait lists, and then people that didn't get into it. But they only have one program room. So as that room is being consumed by this one activity for a couple of weeks, no other activities can be held. So giving the library a greater program room, that's probably the number one need that the library has. I had a couple of questions addressed by a few people referencing the 2015 bond. That was a fantastic experience. On one hand, it was a horrible, miserable experience on the other. The reason I say it was fantastic is because it was very instructive for us as city council and city staff. We had for years heard from the residents that they wanted a recreation center. And as we went through that process, they told us very, very clearly, we do want a recreation center, we just don't want to pay to build it. We'd rather have somebody else do it, say the private sector or whatever, which is a completely appropriate response. But when you say to us as city leaders, we want a rec center, you're talking to the people that could do it. You know, we hear, we want us to build it. But they didn't want it. That's totally fine. And we've backed off completely, of course, from that. At that same time, going through that process, we knew we had a need to rebuild and expand the library that we have. And so the project that we put together was combining this space. And there were a couple of $1 million saved in that combined plan by putting multi-use spaces together, having bathrooms shared in spaces that made sense, and things like that. But the library was, in 2015, still a need that the city had. The space is the same size today. Our population is bigger today than it was in 2015. Program usage still continues to grow. Our circulation still continues to be strong. Our utilization rates, the number of accounts, active accounts, households that use the library continue to be strong. So the need to rebuild and expand the library still exists. So that need was then in 2015, and it continues to be in 2019. But as far as combining anything or doing one thing at a time, I appreciate your comment, Councilwoman Beck. That's not been our proposal. I think you were elected right at that same time, and I think you, Councilman Argyle, you were elected at that same time. You were re-elected, Councilman Gordon. So the group were just 4 years later. I think the very first meetings that we had with the new collective council, we were told by you, we still need a library. So we've got to figure out how to solve the need for a library. And in 2016, we began working to acquire the property right next door. I wish that I could stand before the world and say we have a contract to buy it. We're about this close, but it's been a 3-year process, and we are close enough that we can, with confidence, stand in this public meeting and say, that's where we will put the library. The owner of that property, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, has the contract for it in draft stage, and we should be getting that draft contract from them any day now. But it's been a long 3-year process. Meetings with several different entities and agencies and some local stake presidencies as well as other church staff. It's been a very long process. And where we now have the confidence to say we're going to be able to buy it is that now we're ready to say let's move forward with the design, with the programming and potential design of this space. So let me kind of jump to the very beginning. Can you pull up the chart that Kent had, and hopefully we can go to the one that has all of the years together. Great. Let's do this one. We held the rate in 2018. So just a year ago, we were before this group in 2018, and I pulled up a newspaper article in 2018 from the Daily Herald. And we raised property taxes $150,000 at this very same meeting a year ago. And the rate increase was it was $10, almost $10 exactly. Now, this isn't a great answer. It's not going to be a big number, but to the first gal, and I apologize, I didn't get your name.
Jesse.
Jesse? Okay, Jesse, I apologize, I didn't get your name. The way that the growth factors into it is last year on the residents that were here and the property values that were here, the increase of $150,000 was $10 on the average home. This year, to generate that same revenue of $150,000, the increase is $9.67 for the year on that average home. Now, it's not a big difference. I get that. It's, 33 cents. But that's the impact that growth has. This year, our property value for the city of Spanish Fork grew by 16%. The value on average of the properties that were taxed last year and this year grew by 10%. So the difference between that 16% and that 10% is the growth. And what makes up that growth? Well, there are farm fields that were farm fields yesterday, and now there are homes. That new growth is in that gap between the 10 and 16%. Lowe's, that's under construction. Do all of you know that Lowe's is under construction? No. So the reason I say that and I turn around is I am still surprised at how many times I say that Lowe's is under construction, and people say, what? So I heard a no. Perfect. So Lowe's is under construction in Spanish Fork, just beyond the Walmart, across the street from the hospital. Did you know there was a hospital under construction? Perfect. Okay. So right in front of the hospital, there's a Lowe's under construction. If you go out there, you won't just see them doing groundwork. You'll actually see vertical walls. It's great. They're shooting to be open by Black Friday. So for all the... Oh, this is terrible. But for all the guys... Did you say it? Okay, Stacy said it, so now I can. For all the guys in the room, there's a Black Friday store you can go to. Take your wives. They can go to TJ Maxx or Ross. And then the guy... Anyways. So the Lowe's, they're absolutely paying into this. That change of the field that once was to now being Lowe's is in that gap between that 10 and 16%. The way that property taxes are structured, if my home, your home, if the city didn't do anything, the rate going from this line to that line shouldn't have any change. On my bill, it said my rate was, I'm going to make up a number, but I think I'm close. $238 was the city portion on my bill for my house. If the city didn't do anything, my portion should have gone down, actually, because the city's pie grew and everything. I would have gone down to $231. But because we're having this meeting, they gave me my proposed number, which, whatever it was, it changed. So if we wouldn't have done anything, it would have gone here. Now, this is where growth also comes in. Last year, we held the rate. So last year, the rate would have fallen to somewhere, say, right here. We held the rate to get that $150,000 for the fire station. This year, we held the rate to get the fire station. And if you remember in the budget letter, in the budget meeting that we had with you in May and in June, we expected to hold the rate fully for the fire station and that the library would be completely in addition to that property tax rate. We estimated, we don't get our property tax numbers from the county until about June 20th. So we have meetings in May and in June about this, and we estimated that our property tax rate would have been somewhere north of 10 so that we could capture the 150 and the 180 for the fire station and the library. Growth made it so that rate didn't go up to the 10, it went to the 991. Interestingly, the dollar amount is the same. We were targeting 150,000, we were targeting 180,000. That's really the key number. The rate isn't as important as it is the dollar amount that we targeted. This number didn't change, and neither did that number, but the rate did. Growth will bring that number down. Another point to that, in May when we were talking with you, we showed a $1 amount for the library. But you'll see here for the library, the combined amount for the library was 95 cents. Why is that? Again, it's because the 10% and that 16%, that difference, from the time we were doing our numbers with the numbers that we have in May to the time we get the numbers from the county, we were able to collect that $150,000 on 95 cents to the average home instead of the full dollar. Now, we expect that next year. Let me back up. Last year it was $10 for the fire station. This year $9.67. If the trend continues, I'd imagine that we'll hold the rate for that third year on the fire station plant. It'll be something close to around 9. For the library, it's 95 cents this year. I imagine it will be something less again because of growth. Now we'll go through the feasibility studies and all that, and that will help us to know exactly what we're building, how big it is, and what the ultimate cost will be. And we'll be able to reconcile all of that through this project, or through this process. All right. Hopefully, I'm answering some questions. My guess is I'm creating others. Jesse also asked about the businesses paying into these property taxes. Yes. In fact, every business that pays in, every home has a property tax value that is discounted at the primary residence is discounted 45%. So your home's value
is taxed at 55% of its value. A business is taxed at 100%. So businesses pay a more proportionate share of property taxes than homes do. Does that help, Jesse? At least answer.
Had to leave.
Gone. We'll assume that
You
did.
did well. You ran
Mr.
right out of the...
She either got tired of it or maybe I answered her questions. Hopefully I did. Mr. Denny asked if there was a vote of the citizens or council. This is not a general obligation bond. In 2015, that vote that we put before the public was a general obligation bond. It was secured by property taxes. It would be paid by property taxes wholly and only, and it was secured by property taxes. What we proposed is not to build this with property taxes only. If you remember the numbers that Kent was using, 12 to 14 is the range. We are estimating at this moment that we would bond for $12 million, but we know that it could be more than that. And our contractor for the fire station is actually here, and I'll have him come up maybe in a second and help me with some of the the construction costs. But we won't bond for the entire amount, but we do plan to bond for about $12 million, and we'll use other funds, some sales tax maybe, and some other funds to do it. But we do need to guarantee and want to use property taxes for a portion of that. Probably the most important part, will you go to the sales tax and property tax graph for me? The most important part of that, for the operation of the fire station and for the bond payment of the library, we need to be sure that no matter what, we can pay those obligations. When we build the fire station and staff it, we have to staff it forever. We don't have the luxury, I think, of saying the economy's changed, our revenues have decreased, we're going to let that public safety standard that we've now set go down. We don't also have the luxury of not paying our debt obligations. Currently, the city has very limited debt. I think we have 2 bonds outstanding. One's a water bond, a very, very low amount, $2 or $4 million water bond, and we have the Justice Center construction bond that we share with the state. Those are the 2 remaining bonds that we have. We're in a very strong debt position at this moment. But if you look at this in 2009, 2008, 2010, we decreased nearly $1 million in sales tax revenue. If there is another recession, we've grown. We were at nearly about $4 million, where this is a budgeted amount, so that's high. We're about at just slightly over $8 million today. If we had a recession like we did in 2009, I fully expect that our sales tax will decrease $1 million to $2 million. In Orem, their sales tax in 2008 was around 16 or so million dollars. Theirs decreased about $4 million. We don't have the luxury of that. So as we look to a stable source, we know that property tax is, and we understand the burden that it is. And that's why we've put together the 3-year steps, so that this year it's $1.75 on the average home, and next year it would be about the same, and then the 3rd year it would only be, so I guess it would be the 4th year, it would only be about a 75 or 80 cent increase, stepping it over time so that it's not a sudden and one-time hit to the taxpayers, but it's something that they can grow into. So this is something that we do recognize that there is a need to make payments for the public safety operation forever and a debt payment for the library for 20 years. And I think a natural question that somebody will ask is, well, then in 20 years, will you lower the rate for the library debt service? I think that's a fantastic question and something that we certainly should talk about. But you can't, I don't think, do anything that would commit that council 20 years from now to do something. But that's absolutely a great question that can be asked, and certainly in 20 years should be asked. All right, Mr. Hurst asked a question, is this a plan B to revisit the bond? And I think I already addressed that one. That's not been any discussions, but from the beginning, the need to rebuild the library has been there. Mr. Black had a number of questions and comments about the cost. Nick, would you mind joining me for a second? I've asked Nick Sly. He's the construction manager, general contractor that we've hired for the fire station. We hired them through a competitive bid process. I think we interviewed, we had applications or bids from 6 or 7 contractors. I think we interviewed 4, and we selected Westland Construction. Oh, get up here, stop. Get out of my shadow there. So Nick Nick, could you speak to the construction costs, the environment that we're in, and what you're experiencing with those construction costs?
Just to kind of speak directly to just some of the comments that were made. So the fire station, the budget that we're carrying right now, and I'm not, when I speak, the numbers that I'm going to be talking about is construction costs only. So beyond that would be your FF&E's costs, which is your furniture, what you're going to have to use to furnish the building, and any fees that you guys have to pay as far as city impact fees and those kind of things, as well as none of the architectural design fees. So the number that we are budgeting right now and tracking for that project is about $5.5 million. And so when you take that as an overall cost per square foot, that's tracking around $350 a square foot. Not exactly, I didn't compare it with that exact number, but that's about the range that we're talking about. And in comparing that just to recent fire stations that we have bid and seen built in Salt Lake County and even in Utah County, it's very competitive. I honestly want to praise the city because they've tried to build something that's very nice, fits their needs, meets all their requirements without going overboard. We bid a fire station project in Salt Lake County about 2 years ago, and that construction cost only did go $500 a square foot. So I really feel like they are doing, their due diligence to try to keep the costs down. It is a challenge in this economy, in this climate. We've seen projects that are literally repeat projects, and in the last 2 years, we've seen as much as a 22% increase in cost. And that's due to a lot of things. It's due to labor forces. There's a big shortage in Utah. There's a lot of work going on here. There's only so much labor force to hit everything. That raises prices. And then just material prices increases as it goes along. As the economy's doing well, that's just the inevitability of it. And then you take in things like the issues going on with China and all these tariffs that were going on. That raises the cost of your steel and everything that's imported all the time. So these cost increases is a big part of what we deal with now in our construction costs. What I will say, though, given all of that, Utah generally tracks behind most of the country as far as costs. And that's in a lot of different types of buildings, a lot of different types of structures. It is increasing. It is increasing very fast, especially over the last 5 years. But it's just a part of a growing economy and things that are going well.
So generally, I think with the bid process that you guys will follow in hiring the subs, we're at right now tracking around $380 a square foot, plus or minus a few dollars, something like that, right? And so if we could get construction costs in the $250 range, we would be doing backflips. But I guess I would say to anybody that can do that, will you please share your subs with us? We would love to research those subs, but my guess is that one that probably isn't a real number in today's environment. You said 22% change in, is that what you said?
Last 2 years, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Nick. I was talking to a contractor who is looking at constructing some business spaces over by the Small Mart, and asked him how he's doing, how's he coming along, and he said, well, we'll see. I had hard prices 6 weeks ago. Let's say it was 6 months ago. Maybe it was 6 weeks, but I'll be more conservative. And he said, my prices have raised 25% on me for my subs. I don't know if we can build the project we have. That's the reality of the climate that we're in as far as construction goes. As it relates to the fire station, all told, it's a near $7 million project. Now, you're probably behind me thinking, wait, you guys have used so many different numbers. Let me explain. About $1.5 million of that will be for equipment in the fire station. We don't need a lot of new equipment, but we do need a new second ladder truck. That's about $1 million purchase. And we do need a fourth ambulance. Those two pieces of equipment combine to almost that $1.5 million. Alvin did ask a question about the design One of the weaknesses we have in our budgeting system is that there's a budget number in one year and a budget number in the other, and it's not always what we spend. The architect process was just under $300,000. I want to say it was $290, give or take a few dollars there. And that's the cost for the architect. That not only includes the design, but it also includes their work through construction. That amount will be paid over 3 fiscal years. You'll see the lion's share of it in this fiscal year, but we didn't know last year when we were budgeting how much we would get done in the fiscal year 19 budget. And so we had the majority of it budgeted then. We spent very little of it in last fiscal year. We'll spend most of it in this fiscal year. So the architecture cost is about $290 for that fire station. Not, I think you were kind of penciling together about a 500 number.
This year, we've already spent most of that, so you don't actually need the $300,000 that you put in the fiscal 2020 budget.
Yeah, so whatever we've budgeted in the 2020 budget is a best guess 2 months ago at how much we wouldn't spend in 19 and how much we would still need. Our contract with the architect, and that's maybe the most important number, our contract with the architect is for that 290 number. All right. Mr. Koenig asked if there would be any other hearings on this, and we have a budget public hearing anytime we open the budget. We have this truth and taxation hearing this year. We had one last year. I anticipate we'll have another one next year, but where this isn't a bond, we wouldn't necessarily have one again until we have those other meetings as we go through the processes. Beth, I didn't really see any questions that I missed from you, Beth. I feel like, but if I did, holler at me. Mr. Joyce, back to you. I think he had a great comment about overbuilding, and I think we do need to build more than what we need for today. We would be not doing our job if we built something that was exactly sized for today, but we don't need to build something that is too big for us to grow in a short time. So part of our feasibility study will help us to identify what that should be. A really good example is the fire station has 6 bedrooms.
6 bedrooms and a battalion chief, so 7.
So 7 total bedrooms? Okay, 7 bedrooms. We won't use those bedrooms day one. We won't use those bedrooms maybe even month 2. It's something that we know when we have firefighters staying overnight, we will use those bedrooms. And there may be only 4 firefighters there for a couple of years. But the cost to build it today versus the cost to build something more tomorrow is actually pretty significant. And we do save money, although we spend a little bit more today. In the long run, we do save money identifying the needs for short-term growth and building it today. So for the library, imagine we'll have something similar. We won't build something that's twice as big as what we need and for a build-out of 150,000 residents, but we should build something that will be slightly larger and give us something to grow into. But our feasibility study will help us do that, and hopefully that helps Mr. Joyce know that we're not going to do something too monstrous. What's the word he used? Extravaganza? I think it was the word I heard. But we should do something to be sure we have an eye at least on the future. And then Mr. Harmon asked, will there be new programs such as passport services and things like that? Great question. And I'll leave that one for Pam. Her operation has not been to be a revenue generation project. The library has never been that. In fact, it's going the other way. And I don't say that in a negative way. Pam, as she's considered the best functions and best practices of libraries, you recall, she's, I think, still in the trial, or if not, fully implementing the no fines for books for the youth, the kids stuff, and that's going really well. It's encouraging people to come, circulate more books, and bring them back, even if they're a day late. People don't like fines, and kids, I'm not going to go to the library because I'll have a fine because I never bring it back. So she's actually going the other way. But I think Mr. Harmon asked a great question, and if there are other things that we can do to increase revenue, that's not a bad idea to look at. I wouldn't suggest that we do that in all of our kids' programs. I think the fundamental nature of the library is great as we teach out of that space. But I think it's a great thing for Pam as she looks at the library and uses there that we can look at. And we can do passport services as a city. We don't really have a great space in this building, but as we move forward, maybe that's something we can look at. All right, Myra, what did I miss? You shared one with me earlier. Okay, the library facade. 2015, we did talk about this. The library building can't be used to build up. It's not designed it's not strong enough to be built upon, right? To have a third layer. If we knock out a wall and build a bigger, we probably can't knock out a wall without structurally damaging the building. But there's some fundamental challenges about the library that's across the street from us here, and that is there's no parking lot. There's no parking lot. There's no parking lot. And that's been a big challenge for a lot of the community members. The only way we can fix that problem over there is to tear up the park and put a parking lot there. And at least to the elected officials and to the public with whom I know that you have spoken, that's just not been an option. As the city's central park, as City Park downtown, there's just not new space. And so the concept of tearing up the park and putting in a parking lot, well, there's a group that sang a song about that years ago. They talk about spots on apples too, but we haven't really liked that idea. This facility here, this church adjacent to the city office building, it's a really good sized building. In fact, the library building wouldn't be as large as the footprint of that. And so there will be parking. If you can go to that map, maybe that would be helpful, Scott. We have the ability to pick up significant parking numbers here in this parking lot with the layout here. We imagine that the building will be here in some shape and form. That's us talking about it right now. We haven't done the studies, but we imagine that it'll be here and maybe even close to and somehow connecting to this building. We'll go through that with the feasibility study. One thing we should absolutely talk about is maybe putting it out in this parking lot too. We'll look at all the options. But you have all of this space that we can also have parking. So you should see a significant enhancement to the parking, drive-up drop boxes and things like that for the facility. So can we build it at the library space? The answer is, I guess, yes, but it comes at a cost. Remodeling a building is really expensive, and you still don't have parking and other things that we had. So I think was that the last? Okay. Do you have any questions that I can answer for you?
So I can't remember who talked about it. It was one of the first ones that come up, but talking about the fact that I'll say because of our good management, we were able to acquire the property for the fire station, and will be up for this.
Not use the mic. I can't even hear you.
Sorry. Would you talk about the land acquisitions? Because we were able to do them without having to add them onto this bond and other things because of good management of previous.
Yeah, so I think that's a great comment. We have money saved to purchase this property here. We purchased land for the fire station, and we've actually, the total project, again, I said is about a little bit more than $7 million. Of that, $900,000 only is coming from these property tax increases. So $7 million, of that, only $900,000 is coming from these property tax increases. We're paying for the rest of that through savings. We've been saving for this, and we've been planning for this for years. But we don't have the ability to do all of it with cash up front. That's $7 million, and then 10 or $12 million. We don't have that, but we can do these small bonds. So we're acquiring the land. That's coming not from bond proceeds. Those bond proceeds would solely be for the construction of it. And like I said earlier, we anticipate that we'll have a few $1 million that we can save for and use towards the construction, and we'll only bond for what we need to bond.
Before you sit down,
Yeah.
Beth, and I'll remind you of, I think, one of Beth's questions, and
Thank you.
Scott's question too. We've shown the sales tax number that's around north of $8 million.
Uh-huh.
Explain what we spend sales tax on, why you couldn't just take 2 years of all the sales tax that the city receives and pay for these two projects?
Well, we spend sales tax on everything. The entire budget, right, uses sales tax and property tax. So that money is used to fund all of the park operations, public safety, the library operations, all the general fund functions. And so it's used every year. And in fact, some of the new businesses, specifically one, when a new business comes in town, sometimes they have a need to consume services as well. There's one particular business that when they came in, probably consumed about half of every sales tax dollar that they generated because of the public safety need and legal services associated. So not all of them are go towards just are free to use. But as the city grows, we have more landscaping, more parks to maintain, and every new park that is constructed is a couple $100,000 to maintain. These larger parks that we have 85-acre park, and we have a 10-acre park under construction, and we'll have another 8-acre park under construction next year. Those can be constructed with impact fees, but they can't be maintained with impact fees. And so those sales tax dollars also go towards those just the general O&M for the city.
Right.
Any other questions I can answer? I won't go very far.
Oh, you did well. Thank you. Any questions or comments from the council?
I think one of the comments I have, it was mentioned a couple different times that it was voted down, that the city didn't want it, and now it's being forced again. At the time, and this was mentioned already, at the time it was a rec center, a senior citizen center, and a library all in one. This is clearly separate, and as Councilmember Beck mentioned, there is no plan. None of us have discussed adding to the library to put the rec center back on. The voters, and ourselves included, we voted very clearly as a city as to what was to take place. And again, this is clearly not scientific, but going back through Facebook, where much of that discussion took place amongst one Facebook group site has 12,000 members. The cities has less than that, but nonetheless, going back to 2015 when these discussions took place, the discussion of the people that made comments, and again, this is purely not scientific, just taking a tally, 80% of the people that made comments about library, rec center, senior citizen center, 80% said yes, they would support a library. 20% clearly said no, they would not support a library. And of that 80%, 60% said that they would support both a library and a senior center, but clearly not the rec center. So again, just from discussion back to 2015 of what took place, and again, it's hard to find out what everyone, what everyone had commented. But just with those numbers, there is support for a library. I would encourage those that say, I don't think we need a new library, to schedule some time. And I don't mean this in any negative light of anyone's thought processes. We all have opinions and thoughts, but I would recommend you schedule time with our city librarian to go to find out what actually does take place in the library. And I don't mean that you're not using it, but I do know when I was on the library board, there are hundreds and thousands of books that she actually has to discard and remove from the library because there simply is not space. And so, irrespective of what we as citizens think, there are numbers that bear out the need for a larger facility. There simply aren't the shelves to be able to hold the books that are currently being written as well as books that have been written. And it's a very daunting task as a librarian or for any member of society to be able to look at the thousands upon millions of volumes that have been written and make the decision as to which ones are available for our youth, for our community to read today but not tomorrow because those titles have to be removed because there simply isn't space. Now, granted, there's millions upon millions, and we're not suggesting building a library that holds 800 million books. The Library of Congress, I think, handles that quite nicely. But there should be a way for the members of our community to be able to get books, to get titles, and to get the resources they need without having to wait a period of days to try to get it from an exterior library in the transfer system. The numbers, appreciate the numbers talked about with the fire station, what was being built. I did a quick Google search and came up with similar numbers that were mentioned, but it came up with 2013 as the reference for that. I'm not suggesting there's error in anyone's math, but I think that the contract, as was discussed, the contract we have and the rise in costs is what has been looked at and has been discussed. And so those are just some of my thoughts.
I'll jump in next real quick. I'm currently serving on the library board, and back in February when we met with our department heads, Pam specifically, who's our library director, shared some numbers that I brought with me. Over the past 4 years, the average attendance of just the programs in our library is 21,000 people. Average visits is 227,000 per year. And average circulation is 467,000 items. So it is interesting when I ever hear things that, oh, the libraries are dying. That's definitely not true. In fact, it's increased over the past 3 years by 50,000 items being checked out, whether that's digital or like a movie or a book or something. So, and we did talk about building onto that library, and with the feedback we got from our residents, it was definitely not invading anywhere on the park. They didn't want the grass or the trees torn up. That they didn't want that. My first month, when I was sworn in January 2015, Dave Euler pulled me aside and said, ideally, we would love to get the land next door. That was January 2015. So 3 years, 8 months later, this may happen. So government does work slow. With that being said, it's going to be another 3 or 4 years until a library is built. You look at that, that's like an 8-year span where our community is growing, needs are not being met, that can enhance, the children's lives, teens, and these programs are so important where people can gather together. Kids, especially teens, are so connected digitally. It's wonderful to have programs where you're interacting with other human beings and not just sitting at home behind a screen or a television. So, and just a kudos to our city, the foresight that previous city staff and city councils and mayors have had about that Spanish Fork has the lowest tax rate in the county. Now Eagle Mountain's the only one under us, but by darn, we have the #1 best quality of life. We just left July where we have Fiesta Days, we have 16 new pickleball courts, we have a river trail. We have the best quality of life here in Spanish Fork, and I think to be the second to lowest tax rate is not too shabby. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Stacy.
May I?
You may.
Thanks. 8 years ago, I sat up here in this chair as the Chamber of Commerce held a Meet the Candidate night, and I was excited about being a candidate and just a normal, everyday citizen that decided to throw his hat in the ring. And the question came up, would you support a new library? And I said no. And fast forward about another month, and I was meeting all of the department heads, and I'm over at the library touring the facility, and Pam showing me the facilities and a lot of the rain spots on the ceilings and a lot of the things that have been mentioned and a lot of the things that 8 years ago we have been repairing and the broken concrete and things. And Pam says, I know this isn't in your top 10 like you said. And but I only tell you that because over the last 8 years, we have constantly talked about it and planned and prepared. And I think that's, as I hear a lot of the discussion, I guess the most important message I would say is the reason that property taxes are low in Spanish Fork is there is this level of planning and a level of a level of trust that we are trying to build the best facilities and give the best quality of life, as Councilwoman Beck said, for not just you, but us, because we live here too. And that's just my message as I heard you, and I heard what you said because I watched Springville, and that was part of my message 4 years ago. And I know what happened there, and I've watched how their progress has went. And so to answer you directly, no, there's not a plan for a rec center. But yes, this is an answer to a plan for a library, and I have changed my mind as why I think we need a new library in town, and also why our fire station needs are there. The last comment I want to make is the reason this has been a prolonged fire station is because of the wonderful volunteers that we still have today that serve as first responders. And I don't know if you were here for my council comments earlier, but I mean that when I say those that carry a pager in the middle of the night while I sleep peacefully, so that if it goes off because there's a fire and they run, we still have volunteer firefighters that put their lives on the line for us, and that is so cool to me. And those part of the reasons I wanted to serve. And so that's why I'm up here. And so I hope that there's this level of trust as we every year pass budgets and do this. We're part of it. We're part of the process as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I want to touch on something that Councilman Gordon just mentioned. When we had an open house for the fire station, some residents that may be watching this or watch it later or are here tonight may recall at the East Meadows Elementary, and I had a long conversation with a gentleman. He had an Idaho Falls firefighter T-shirt on, and he asked me why, point blank, why don't you have a full-time fire department today? And I walked him through the history that you kind of mentioned, Councilman Gordon, and I think it's an important thing that we talk about, that we are where we are today in many regards because of the service provided by a lot of people, and we have saved millions of dollars through the years because of the service provided by volunteers and eventually by stipend-bearing volunteers, and then by part-time ambulance employees and still stipend-paid volunteers. It's a funny word, but they get paid a very, very small amount for the number of calls that they go on. It's allowed under federal law, but it ends up being pretty small amount based on the call volume. But we have saved literally millions of dollars over the years. And the best way I can describe it is we have done things the Spanish Fork way. It's not the Lehigh way. It's not the American Fork way. It's not the Boston way or the New York way. It's the Spanish Fork way. We're blazing our own trail. And the level of service has been here, and it's been amazing. And that level of service will continue. At some point in the near future, we will have to have people at the station 24 hours a day. What people behind me may not know, and what those watching may not know, is that there are people in our fire station from 7 in the morning until 7 p.m. And shortly, Steve, when is it there now till midnight? Okay, so we've already switched that. 7 a.m. until midnight every day, responding from the station. What that means is our response time from 7 a.m. to midnight has shrunk by nearly 4 to 5 minutes. And so from 12 until 7 in the morning, we have a little bit longer response time. But we will someday have firefighters sleeping, and they will be at the second fire station because that's where we'll have sleeping rooms for them. But we have literally saved millions of dollars through the years. And I think one of the reasons why the other cities have those higher property tax rates is because of their the number of firefighters and EMTs that they have that are full-time, and some of the other services that they provide to their residents that we do either differently, and I guess I would describe it in the Spanish Fork way. I love that way. That's the right way to do it. We take steps every year to make it better and do it as cost effectively as we can. And in that way, again, saving millions of dollars through the years, because we haven't had all of these firefighters or that others do. We have volunteers that frankly are amazing and truly make, I think, the city unique in many ways. So I just wanted to touch on that and add to that. Thanks.
Really quick, Mayor, 5.5 years have been on the council. There's two items that come to mind, that statements that I've had that I've looked over at Mayor Leifson after saying them, not in this setting, but other settings, and I've thought, he is going to punch me in the face. Thankfully, he didn't. He's not a violent man. One was saying, hey, the second place team wants to come down Main Street in a fire engine too. And he said, we don't do second place on the fire engine. It's first place. And he made that clear, which is a good rule, Mayor. You have to be first place. Second was going to Brandon's point of not fully understanding the library and Pam's department there. I remember sitting in an early meeting talking about the library, and this is easily 5.5, 6 years ago, and bringing up, hey, we've got to start looking at planning for the library. And I brought up my phone and said, I've got a library, I've got Google, I've got it right here. And it's been an education since then, a quick education by Pam then, but an education year by year that I've received of the importance of the library. On my phone, it seems quick and easy, and it seems like I can get to social media, as Kier brought up, and find answers or opinions to things, but I don't get social capital. And social capital is being social with another human. My personal story to that recently has been making a career change since April of this year. Brandon can attest to this. Being over in Springville a whole lot for that, I have visited the library probably more in the last, 3 months than I have in the last 5 years or so, maybe more than that. But going over in that library and seeing people just like me amongst the kids, amongst the adults, studying, going someplace where the 2-year-old at home isn't, was critical. Was critical for me being able to hone in, do what I needed to do, connect to Wi-Fi, and also just have a different look. Some of those days where you needed a different look and a quiet space, but also a space that was interactive with people and see other people doing those good things. So there's my personal story of the library. I know you've heard me just about every meeting talk about our active and healthy movement, which I'm telling you has yielded results in our city, yielded results for the mental health and the physical health of our community. These two items here I put at the top of the list of our job as elected officials is the health and the safety of our citizens. And I think a library that is big enough and a place where people can go safely and get what they need is healthy for the mind, healthy for the body, and obviously the safety of our citizens up on the east side that has grown immensely since our new fire station down on Main Street is part of that safety aspect. So the health and safety of our citizens, I think, are what we're discussing here. It's already been said how many years this has been in the plans. I will tell you it's never politically popular to talk about the ways to do this because they're not easy, and it talks about taxes, and it talks about your taxes, our taxes, business taxes. We've all been involved in the Chamber of Commerce and local businesses, and this costs them more than it costs us in our residential property taxes. So it's not politically popular, but I don't think anyone up here did this for maybe political careers or political popularity, but try to look at things in the long game and the statesman view rather than the political view, which is the Spanish Fork way that's already been discussed here. So I appreciate all the insight, all the opinions, all the questions too, because that just makes a better product, and we expect them. It needs to happen through the process. So that's all I have, Mayor.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank you for coming and expressing your opinions. I am grateful to the departments. They answered your questions. I wrote them down as fast as I could, too. This has not just been a willy-nilly thing that we wanted to do. This has been in the plans, and I have learned over the past 4 years, yeah, bureaucracy takes a long time. Seth can tell you that probably more than once I've offered to knock that building down next door and haul it off to get the process going, because we do need a library. And you heard the numbers that Stacy talked about. And when I first come here and they said those numbers, it was like, oh my heck. And I said the same thing about that Mike said. I carry that on my hip. But this city is involved in this library. The programs that Pam puts on, they're overwhelmed, and they show up, and she has to turn them away because she has not only the space, and she's even going out back and onto the lawn and stuff to carry on these programs. Literacy is important. These kids need to learn to read, and this helps them. And as Mike said, this is about quality of life in this community, and Spanish Fork has a tendency to do it right. I am not for tax raises. I would always vote no. If you've known that, if you've watched, I'm usually on the end of the tax saying no. But I am in favor for this. It's planning. We're not going to build it tomorrow. It's a few years down the road. I wish it was quicker myself, but the planning allows us to then save some money and do this in a right fashion. And you've heard Seth talk about, we're not building a Taj Mahal. We do need to plan for the future, but we need to build a building that's adequate for our needs and those things. But thank you for coming and expressing your opinions.
Right.
Mayor, if I may, just one thing that I wanted to touch on that I didn't is, I'm sure there may be some watching that think, well, the council clearly has their minds made up. They want this and have wanted it for some time. I don't see it necessarily as a want, but a need to the community. The two things that I do want to touch upon that were brought up and discussed, one was, why not wait? My question would then be when. If we wait a couple of years and then do it, feasibly, construction costs would even be greater than they are now. This has been something that has been the better part of almost a decade in planning for a library. One option was rolling it into a rec center, but it's been batted around for almost a decade in the need for a new library. And so if we wait 2 more years, okay, so from the body here today, the express opinion is in 2 years, this is then acceptable. I would wager that those that are saying that in 2 years would then come and say, well, no, now is not a good time to raise taxes because of X, Y, Z reason. And so if I don't see a good reason as to waiting simply for the virtue of waiting. Living in a city is a community, and it's a law of averages as well. As a council and as city staff, and I guess using city as the broader term, the city is very sympathetic to everyone's personal finances, which is why this phased approach in doing it was thought out, was researched, and was ultimately decided upon to be put forward to the council for this. There are members of our community that do not have a job currently at all, and there are other members of our community that are making 6 figures on a very regular basis. The law of averages, which is why the averages on the property tax is what has been discussed, and each member of the council and our community at certain times have all faced moments where we wish we had another 10 spot, another 20 spot, and another whatever the case may be to be able to provide for our families. Which is why this phased approach was put forward as a proposal to try to lessen the burden on families, to be able to afford the families time, to be able to find ways and means for any changes that may come. Again, as was discussed, we are 9% of the property tax. We cannot control what Nebo School District does, what the county does, what the state does. And if we wait for what outside entities do, then we will never get anything done and accomplished for the better of the citizens of Spanish Fork. And so Spanish Fork has to be able to take a stance based on the law of averages, understanding it may hurt some and it may not be a drop in the bucket for others. And so we are very sensitive to that. We do recognize that these are increases. But again, after a decade worth of study and a decade worth of books being tossed out because there simply isn't room, children turned away from programs, this is why we've decided on this period of time to bring it before the council to discuss and to vote.
Anybody else? Okay. Thank you. I really appreciate all of you coming in. This is how we have a good discussion. You get raise questions, whether you're for it or against it. We try to answer those questions the best as we can see. I mean, it's been talked about how long this has been discussed. I think I've been here longer than anybody. 13 years ago, it was discussed 13 years ago, the library. And so it's not new, but it's something that we take seriously and something that we as elected officials take seriously, because you elected us, you put your trust in us, and we're trying to do the best we can with all the facts, with all the information to do the things that will make this city continue to be great, because it is a great city, you know. And I just want everybody to realize that, you know, this is the home of Pride and Progress, and we do take a lot of pride in what we do here, and we like to grow. And so we're trying to do the decisions we're making now are going to affect citizens 10, 15, 20 years down the road, and that's what we're trying to do, is make a better life for everyone else. And so I applaud these council members. They've studied this issue. They haven't taken this lightly. They've spent a lot of time and learned all about this, the pros and the cons, and our staff has done a great job of presenting those items to us. And so I just wanted to let them know how much I appreciate them. And Mike, I would not punch you in the face. I might kick your butt.
Maybe that's what you were saying.
I will never punch you.
Okay,
So,
all right.
But with that, I would entertain a motion.
I move we approve Resolution 1918, adopting the final tax rate for the 2019 tax year. I don't know if you needed me to call it out, Kent, of the 991 number, if that's, I just did. That's my motion.
Got a motion by Councilman Mendenhall.
Second.
Second by Councilman Scobes. This will be a roll call vote. Councilman Gordon.
Aye.
Councilmember Beck.
Aye.
Councilman Argal.
Aye.
Councilman Scobes.
Aye.
Councilman Mendenhall.
Aye.
That passes. All right, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Oh, the budget, excuse me. Oh, I see that. Right there.
I'll go extra quick on this.
Well, good, because I think these people have been here a long time. Thank you so much for coming.
Quickly through on the budget. The budget document was given. Did I do something to this? Oh, there we go. Back in May, we started with the tentative budget, and you adopted the tentative budget, and it has not had any changes to it except for two numbers, and it was because of the property tax. And I'm just going to buzz through this. So this is exactly the same budget numbers that we had. The $105,504,044. It was the same as the public hearing we had in June. The only thing that changed, if I get this button to work, there we go. No, in fact, I'm just going to buzz through this. This is exactly the same budget that we had, that we talked about in the public hearing in June. But I want to show you the number that changed. Next one. Go ahead. Next one. Oh, back one. Right here. There's a rate change? Okay. The property tax, when we got the final numbers, the budget was presented in May, and so we didn't even have the values coming yet. So as we got the corrected values from the county, the new growth numbers, what that was, we need to adjust the property tax here up $174,000, and to balance the budget, so make it easier, we also estimated maybe that budget there was a little bit small, so we lowered that budget number down to this number, so we just slid between those two. So in total, the general fund didn't change. It just slid from sales tax into property tax to balance that out.
Great.
So what you need to adopt is the budget as the tentative budget as presented, subject to this slight change in the property tax and the sales tax.
Great. I would entertain a motion.
I move we approve the fiscal year 2020 budget with the slight change in property tax and sales tax as outlined by Kent.
Second?
Got a motion by Councilman Mendenhall, a second by Councilman Gordon. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
I move we adjourn from special truth and tax,
Yep.
Back into
adjourn out of that?
And then go back into our,
Adjourn from special truth and taxation city council meeting and go back into regular city council meeting.
great.
Second?
Got a motion by Councilman Mendenhall, a second by Councilmember Beck. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you for all those that came for that meeting. We're back into our regular city council meeting.
I move we go into closed session for reasonably imminent litigation and land transaction.
Got a motion by Councilman Gordon,
Second.
second by Councilman Mendenhall. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you so much for being here. Appreciate that.